Welcome to the MMA Fan Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Stu and Blake.
Hello and welcome to the MMA Fan Podcast. I am Blake Harrison, and joining me as ever with his fancy little backdrop there. Yeah, but not for this show, for a different show.
Shameless plug.
So shameless plug on his other work. But yeah, it's Stu Whiffen. How are you, mate?
I'm all right. You all right?
I'm all right. You're very echoey. You've gone extra echoey from when we were talking earlier.
I know it's it should be too bad for the listeners because you're getting it through the laptop, which is in a big space, whereas I'm right next to this microphone. So what the listeners are getting are my sultry tones, just just kind of like mumbling in their ears.
They're getting Barry White. And I'm getting, I don't know,
Danny
the equivalent of an echo. Yeah. You wait till Sean O'Malley comes up, you fucking melt, mate.
Well, we was going to talk 283 today, wasn't we? But we've decided, in the light of so much kind of furore in the world of UFC, that we're going to do two episodes today. So we're going to record a kind of news update really and discuss all the stuff that I'm sure you've all been discussing and rejoicing or shaking your head, scratching your head, looking disappointed at. All manner of stuff's gone good and bad in the world of UFC of recent weeks. So we're going to have a deep dive on a lot of that, and then we're going to have a little break. Then we're going to come back and we're going to record another episode for you, looking ahead at 283. But today it's UFC news.
UFC news. So let's start with the biggest news that's happened most recently, and that is the fact that Francis Ngannou is not only no longer the UFC champion, he's no longer a UFC fighter. He's been released. Dana White had a press conference about it, and he has said that he's waiving all the rights to like matching any contract he could get elsewhere, all of that kind of stuff. Ngannou's gone. That's it. The contract negotiations did not work out, and Ngannou is now a free agent. So we're going to try and look at this from points of views of everyone involved, UFC, Francis, and all of that. And obviously, we will talk about the return of John Jones and his fight now against Cyril Gane in a couple of months for the undisputed UFC heavyweight title. But let's start with Francis first.
But what I wanted to say with this before we jump in is we're looking at it from both perspectives, as from Francis and the UFC's, but as the MMA Fan Podcast, what is the fan going to lose from Francis not being in the UFC, do you think?
You're right. I forgot the most integral part of this. It's written in the title of our show. It's the fans.
Yeah.
It's the fans. What are the fans losing? Well, I think they're losing quite a lot because, you know, it's one of those things now where whatever happens, it's always going to be like, yeah, but Francis. But and we've missed out. The Francis versus John Jones fight is a fight that people have wanted for probably 3 or 4 years now.
Yeah.
Three or so years since Jones said he's moving up to heavyweight. Everyone wanted Francis versus John Jones.
Yeah.
Everyone wanted that fight. We'll now never get it. It's another one of those ones. It's like Khabib Tony in his prime, even though I look back on that and go, we didn't actually need that fight. Or GSP Anderson Silva, you know, all Cyborg Nunes 2, which is a fight I've always wanted to see. So we won't get that now. I don't think we'll ever get that. And that is such a shame. So as fans, we're missing a lot because Francis was really coming into his own, becoming a much more well-rounded mixed martial artist. Yes, he's 36 or whatever, but heavyweights age a bit more like fine wine. Whereas, you know, when we talk about our UFC 283 episode, we'll talk about the flyweight fights and how they age like milk. So that is going to be, you know, he still was in his prime. He had good years ahead of him. And I think we've missed some real spectacles, like Jones versus Francis versus, you know, even a Pavlovich, a Tom Aspinall down the line. Even Cyril Gane rematch. I think that could have been a great fight. And yeah, we've lost all, as fans, we've lost all of that. And we've now got a situation where the baddest man on the planet, the UFC heavyweight champion of the world, is now going to be elsewhere doing whatever he does next, which we'll talk about and hypothesize about. And it will feel like we've missed something. We've missed either a changing of the guard where Francis loses to someone and that person becomes unequivocally the baddest man on the planet. Or we've missed Francis tearing through 2 or 3 more challengers. And that would have been so exciting as well, because the heavyweight division is great at the moment. The heavyweight division is one of the best it's been for a long, long time.
When you look at fights like Pavlovich, Tom Aspinall, Blades, they're all looking incredible at the moment. Obviously, we're waiting for Aspinall to come back from injury, but so many exciting fights to be made in there. And again, I'd love to have seen them against Francis, because everybody wants to be the guy to have beaten the baddest man on the planet.
Yeah.
But I mean, let's start looking at some of the reasons that have been sort of thrown in and around why he's gone, and it's been something that's been spoken about for a few years now. That there seems to be contract issues between Francis and the UFC, and one of the things, I mean, Dana said something that the deal would have made him the highest paid heavyweight star of the UFC of all time.
Mm-hmm.
Who do you think held that record today?
Brock Lesnar, without a doubt.
Oh, of course it was. Of course it was. Yeah, my bad. Yeah, of course it was. And
that's good money. Brock would have been on very good money. He's up there. He's not Conor level, and I believe Israel Adesanya, a year or so ago, was made the second highest paid fighter on the roster at that time. So was he higher paid than Brock? I don't know. There's inflation. There's all these types of, but whatever Brock Lesnar was on, that would have been some big money, and he's turned that down. So, yeah, what were you going on to say with regards to the money and that?
Do you believe Dana when he says that? I mean, is that spin? I know I'm sure Dana's going to come up a lot in this episode, but I do take a lot of what he said. I know he speaks his mind, quite unprofessionally at times, but then you also think there's so much spin involved in this organisation, and he's very good at spinning it. And
100%.
And so I'm keen to sort of see what comes out of the wash with this whole situation, because I do think it's a big loss for the UFC and for us as fans, because he was terrifying. Absolutely terrifying to watch, and the power that man had was absolutely ridiculous. And to see that matched against someone like a Pavlovich would have been so exciting. But we're not going to see that now. We'll get on to what we're going to see in that division in a moment. But so, what do you think is next for Francis?
Well, I don't think he left because of money. He spoke a lot before the Cyril Gane fight about respect and how disrespected he was by the UFC in the lead up to him becoming a champion, when they were just kind of, not giving him the title fight when he clearly had earned the title fight. He spoke a lot about, I think, the lack of freedom and how he wanted to do other things with his career, like box. I mean, God, heaven forbid, but box Tyson Fury. I have no interest in that whatsoever.
Yeah.
However, if you're Francis Ngannou and you're 36 years old, you've got a few good years left. If someone says you can sign a 5-fight contract to the UFC, even if it means you're earning, $2 million per fight. I mean, I'm pulling that figure out of my elbow, but you're earning $2 million per fight. Let's just say, with the points involved, the pay-per-view points. So you get 10 million after 5 fights. If he boxes Tyson Fury, regardless of the fact that it's a bit of a circus, he's never got a chance in hell, and it's just a bit of a silly fight, he probably earns more than that in the one fight.
100%.
So
100%. Mega money.
If you're Francis or Francis Ngannou's advisors, you're saying,
or
you
family,
have to try and make that work. Or family, absolutely. You're probably trying to just go and box Tyson. Because the other thing is, you can always try and go back to the UFC after boxing Tyson Fury, being a bigger star, and saying, Yeah, that 10 million still on the table. And the UFC, I think, would be silly to say no, because again, otherwise the spectre, the ghost of Francis Ngannou will always haunt that heavyweight division. And no matter who's champion, you go, yeah, but if Francis landed on John Jones, bang. Or, if we've already seen Francis beat Cyril Gane, so we know he's not. Like, that spectre will always be there. So I think getting him back would be a good thing. So he could go and box Tyson. The other options are things like, what if the PFL pulled out their checkbook? They've signed another big star recently, very different, but they've signed, we might talk about it at the end of the episode if we've got time. I don't know how much I'm that bothered or not, but Jake Paul's gone to the PFL.
Yeah.
He's probably on good money. That brings loads of eyeballs to them. If you've got Francis Ngannou and Jake Paul in the PFL, I think that would make them the second biggest MMA organization in the world. I think they surpass Bellator without question. I think at the moment there's questions. Is it one? Is it PFL? Is it Bellator? If PFL have got Jake Paul with the eyeballs that he will bring to it,
and the baddest man on the planet.
They're the second biggest organization on the planet. I don't think there's a question anymore if that happens. So they could be doing that. Will they have the money for it? There's rumors that Bellator are in trouble financially and they might need to be bought out by someone. If they have the ability to sign Francis Ngannou, Jesus, they should do it. Because again, if they can say they sometimes make claims that they've got the best light heavyweight division. I don't know if that's true, but would you say Vadim Nemkov could beat Glover Teixeira or beat Jamal Hill?
Possibly.
Very, very possibly could. I mean, Usman Nurmagomedov at lightweight. I mean, obviously Islam is the guy in the UFC is probably better, but Usman Nurmagomedov at lightweight and AJ McKee at lightweight over in Bellator, they could give a really tough night to anyone in the top 5 of the UFC, I would say. So there's claims there, but they're disputed. But you cannot dispute if Francis Ngannou signs to Bellator, they just go, yep, we've got the best heavyweight on the planet, and there's nothing anyone can say about it.
Yeah.
So if they got their checkbook out and said, Francis, please come here, we'll pay you whatever you friggin' want, that makes sense as well. And Dana White had that thing that seemed to be a little dig at Francis, where in the press conference he was saying Francis feels like he wants to fight lesser competition for more money. And that seemed to be his way of having a dig at Francis. And I'm like, hang on a minute. These guys are prize fighters. Is that not the whole point? If you can earn more money fighting lesser competition, I'd do that. Especially if you've already gone, oh, you're already the baddest. You've already proven that you're the best. You've already held the UFC title. So you have proven that you're the best. Now, what I'm going to do is fight worse opponents, less dangerous opponents, which is better for my health. But I'm actually going to earn more money doing it as well.
Yeah.
Like,
smart
that's
man.
what you do.
That's the smart move.
That's a smart move, isn't it? I'd do it. Like, I think we'd all do it.
Yeah.
Like, it just makes way more sense. Who's going to go, especially after already being a champion in the UFC, who's going to go, no, I'd rather earn less and fight way better competition where I could really hurt myself and, long-term health damage. I was like, no, that's crazy. So it's crazy. I don't know why I tried to do Christopher Walken then. It's crazy, Francis Ngannou is a smart man. It's ridiculous. So yeah, I don't understand that as a kind of potential slight on Ngannou. And anyone saying that he's ducking John Jones, with absolute fucking bullshit.
Yeah.
He's not ducking John Jones. I think he'd love to fight John Jones. Taking John Jones when John Jones has had 3 and a bit years off or whatever.
Yeah.
And with all due respect to him, didn't look great in his last fight against Dominic Reyes. And we all know Dominic Reyes hasn't done particularly well since.
Yeah.
So, and how's he going to be with the extra weight? I think Francis would be a firm favourite in that fight and be happy to take it. So, yeah, Francis has a lot of options. WWF or WWE, whatever you call it now. He could go over there, have a wrestle for a bit. I mean, I know wrestling's not his strong point, but, he could go and do a bit
Any
of that.
organisation will have checkbooks out for the baddest man on the planet.
100%. 100%. It's a huge coup to get Francis Ngannou right now. So
absolutely, and best of luck to him. Absolute best of luck to him.
As a fan, do I want him in the UFC? absolutely. I want to see him defend that belt. But also as a fan and as a human, I just want to go, yeah, mate, go and earn your money and live a happy, wonderful life. Lord knows you've earned it. And I cannot wait for the Hollywood movie that is his kind of biopic at some point, because the man needs it. That needs to be done right. He should be on every frigging talk show in America, across the world. Just like, what a story that man has. And if you don't know it, go and look it up. He's got an unbelievable story
of hardship.
So good luck to him. I wish him all the best. And that leads us on to a certain billboard that broke some news.
Absolutely. So what came first, the billboard or the news that Francis had been cut?
The billboard.
Right.
So for those that don't know, the T-Mobile Arena in Vegas, I'm assuming, there was a massive billboard out front in the morning saying John Jones versus Cyril Gane for the heavyweight title, UFC 285 in March. And the UFC hadn't released anything yet about Francis, about this fight, none of it. So some poor kid has like pressed enter on put it on the billboard button on the computer, and has then probably got an absolute tongue lashing off of his bosses, Dana, whatever it is. But yeah, that released early. People were making comments. We put it up on our socials as well. That this is interesting. What's going on here? No sign of anything saying interim title. And so Dana White came out later that night and had to tell the news that Francis is gone, and they are making an undisputed heavyweight title fight for the vacant belt, Cyril Gane against the returning John Jones. What are your thoughts on the fight itself? John Jones versus Cyril Gane.
Should he have come back straight to a title shot?
No. I think I think that's unquestionable. I mean, I don't know if you want to question it. I think John Jones being John Jones, he deserves to come back to a title shot. I mean, again, I'm putting aside all of the outside of the cage stuff, but from a purely sporting point of view, the guy that led the light heavyweight division for so long, unbelievable fighter, arguably the best to ever do it. Hashtag PEDs. All that stuff. He deserves a title shot. There's no question he deserves a title shot straight away. So, but how do you feel about the fight itself? How do you see it going? Are you excited about it? What's your feelings?
It's really weird, because when you think of John Jones, when you don't think of all the stuff that's happened outside the octagon, you look back with rose-tinted glasses at some of the most incredible performances any mixed martial artist has ever been involved in. And that excites me. Get the thought of seeing some of that magic again. However, I'm also thinking, cast your mind back to that Dominic Reyes fight. Did he win it? Tight. And what was the fight he had before Reyes? But I remember. Was
it Thiago Santos?
And that wasn't that exciting either, or that dominant, if I remember rightly.
No, I mean, again, Thiago Santos blew out both his knees during that fight, and I haven't rewatched the fight, so I couldn't tell you whether it was a good decision or bad decision, but I believe it was a close decision between John and Santos that night.
And these are fighters that I think a few years previously, John Jones would have just put away very, very quickly in spectacular fashion. The John Jones that was beating Gustafsson and DC and Machida and all of these fighters, he was special, but that was a long time ago. And so what we've seen is, ring rust is a thing, and however much sparring you do, we've spoken to countless fighters about this, and ring rust is a legitimate thing. And he's not been in that ring for a long, long time. And in that time, he has put on a lot of weight. And you just wonder, how agile are John Jones are we going to see? Are we going to see, how is that going to affect age and weight? How is that going to affect his speed? Essentially, I see it as a relatively, if it's even Jones at 70% of what we've seen previously, I think he beats Cyril Gane by wrestling him and being a more well-rounded fighter than Cyril Gane. I love Cyril Gane. I think he's a fantastic ambassador for the sport. an incredible kickboxer. But I think he's going to find, like I say, John Jones at even 70%, just too well-rounded for him. But we don't know. This is what makes it exciting. This is what makes it interesting. Yeah. It's John Jones. He might get arrested the night before for, I don't know, smuggling tigers into the MGM. You just don't know. It's John Jones.
You don't know.
And then, as well as that, we do not know. We've seen very little footage of John Jones sparring, rolling at heavyweight. You see little clips of bits and pieces, and you occasionally get the photo where he looks massive, but doesn't look uncomfortably massive, looks good. And but it's just what makes it exciting. What are we going to see when he comes back? And I don't know. When you've been partying a lot and you've been away from the cage for a long time, the same Conor McGregor never come back. And
fair point.
Are we going to see that with John Jones? Who knows? I'm so excited. I think the guy's a dick, but I'm so excited.
Well, sorry if I look distracted there. I had to bring something up because I'm going to do a shout out to our man Scroobius Pip,
right?
Who on our WhatsApp group, and I hope he doesn't mind me sharing this, on our WhatsApp group, he put a little while ago, and I was really shocked, but really struggled with this statement. He put, fun fact, it's been 8 years since John Jones last had an impressive win. And now I responded to that in the end with, there's a great Larry David Curb Your Enthusiasm gif of him kind of being like, well, maybe. And it's kind of, and it's great because I looked up and I have to run through John Jones's record, and
let's do it. Read it out. What we got?
Right. So last fight we mentioned Dominic Reyes, not an impressive win, and it's not like Dominic Reyes has lit the world on fire since that fight. And actually, a lot of people scored that fight for Reyes. So there you go. Thiago Santos blew out both his knees. Split decision win over a Santos that was, at points in that fight had no knees. Before that, Anthony Smith, which I believe was a dominant win. Now, is Anthony Smith truly title, real title contender? I don't know. He's
According
kind
to
of
our friends at Fight Disciples, he's going to be the light heavyweight champ at the end of this year.
Well, I don't agree with that, but there you go. But look, so, Anthony Smith, I think that was a dominant win. Alexander Gustafsson too. Yes, that was dominant, but Gus wasn't the same Gus. Before that, the Daniel Cormier head kick, which was incredibly impressive. However, he popped for PEDs after that. So can you count it? Maybe not. Then before that, you've got Ovince St. Preux. He came back after a long layoff, and the Ovince St. Preux fight was boring as hell. It was not impressive. John Jones looked very sluggish, but he got a unanimous decision win over Ovince St. Preux, who, again, is not really up there as like a great fighter. Like,
he was looking good at that time, to give him his credit,
Yeah. Then before that, again, 8 years ago, so Pip's, I'm assuming this is what Pip said was the last impressive win, was Daniel Cormier in their first fight at UFC 182, unanimous decision win back in 2015. Now, I struggled with Pip's statement because I felt like, I think the Anthony Smith fight, despite the fact that there was a point, I think it was later in the fight, that there was that illegal knee. So again, could you say it's impressive in the fact that if Smith lies down and does an Aljamain Sterling, Smith walks away with the belt. John Jones loses by disqualification. So can you say that's impressive? I don't know. Gustafsson too, it is impressive win, but Gus wasn't Gus, so that's debatable as well, I guess. I think that statement is harsh. But equally, I can totally see where Pip's coming from. So it is really difficult. And now that the fight has been made between Garn and John Jones, Garn is apparently the betting favourite. And I can see why. I actually, in a weird twist of fate, I think Francis Ngannou was an easier matchup for John Jones than Cyril Garn is. The reason for that is I think that John Jones has dealt with power punches and stuff like that before. That's nothing new to him. Francis Ngannou is by no means someone that's bouncing around on his toes. He's a bit of a ploddy forward. I mean, he can blitz, but, you know, I think after 2 rounds, Ngannou can get a bit tired. I know he showcased in the Cyril Gane fight, he could do something different, but the way he won that Cyril Gane fight was Cyril Gane was not expecting that, you know, wrestler Francis to come out. That came out of absolutely nowhere. And Cyril was piecing him up for the first 2 rounds.
But didn't have many answers to that wrestling, did he?
He didn't. But here's the thing. I'm probably going to... I've picked John Jones as my champion at the end of the year for heavyweight. Yeah. So I will have to go for John Jones to beat Cyril Gane. However, I can see a world in which Cyril wins this fight by outpointing him.
Right.
He could outpoint him. I do think Cyril's a natural heavyweight, whereas John isn't.
5 rounds.
I think 5 rounds. I think Cyril's game plan in a lot of fights is just to outpoint you. Yes, he finished Derek Lewis, but there's a lot of his fights where he just outpoints people. He's just on his toes the whole time. You cannot hit him, and he hits you and outpoints you. Is it the most exciting form of striking? No, not always, but it is very effective, very good, and he is a unique heavyweight in the way that he moves around the octagon. So John Jones is going to have to try and implement the wrestling and do that and just try and dominate him that way. But Gane will be expecting that. Gane's whole training camp will be, I'm expecting the wrestling. And if he's been smart, he was probably expecting a fight with Curtis Blades prior to this. So he's already been training the wrestling anyway. And John Jones is probably not as good a wrestler at heavyweight as what Curtis Blades is, I would imagine. So John Jones, obviously great striker, very good defensively, a good wrestler. Cyril Gane, though, I would argue, particularly at heavyweight, probably a better striker. I think his movement will be more fluid. But obviously, there's a huge discrepancy in the wrestling. So that's where I think John will have to win the fight. But Gane will be expecting it. So that will change.
Has John Jones ever been dropped?
I couldn't answer that question. I don't know for sure. I don't know for sure. I know it was... Gustafsson was the first person to take him down.
Yeah.
But in terms of being dropped, I don't know. I know Reyes landed on him well. Maybe it was Dominic. I don't know. But yeah, no, it'd be really, really interesting to see which John Jones turns up and how this fight's go. But I can definitely see a world in which Cyril Gane outpoints John Jones, or maybe even TKOs him, because again, it's been such a long time since John's been in the cage.
Yeah.
And you just, that is one of those variables you just can't account for. It's just, he could come back like he's never missed a beat, or he could come back looking like half of the John Jones that he was in his heyday.
Yeah.
So we just don't know. And that's the fascinating and interesting thing that will come from all of this. Is there anything more about Jones Gane that you want to talk about?
No, I mean, I think he's done a very good job of kind of keeping the cameras away, because
Jones?
Yeah, because you know, we've not seen a lot, and I touched on it, earlier, but nobody's really getting any insight. You know, you're hearing people like Cejudo saying, he's looking incredible, but he's gonna say that he's in his gym, but yeah, it's just the not knowing, and like you say, everything else aside. You say what John Jones turns up. Did you mean that insofar as, are we going to see John Jones that's having issues in his personal life, that's not really come to fight? He's trying to wing it, like we saw with quite a few of his fights where, he just felt like, he was just going through the motions to try and get a victory. And because there was so much going on outside of the octagon, we don't know what's going on in his life. And we know that, all of these things previously have had effects on his performances. You throw that in the mix with the age, with the new weight, 5 rounds, been out the ring for so long. I don't know. We could see something. I don't want to put the dampers on it. We could see something really rubbish. We could just see a really dull, slow, sluggish, uninteresting John Jones turn up, and we see Cyril Gane coast to just picking him off with little shots and getting a points win.
I mean, that's the thing. There's so many possible outcomes.
Should have gone to
yeah. Yeah. Because the other thing is, we could see John Jones come back, be unbelievable in his wrestling. Yeah. Cyril has no answer for it, but it's kind of a bit of a lay and pray for 5 rounds because Jones has lost that edge to him. He hasn't been in a cage for a bit. He's worried about gassing out, all that kind of stuff. It could be a really boring fight. Yeah. It really could. Because either way, either Cyril outpointing him or Jones, just wrestling him for 5 rounds. All of it could potentially be quite dull.
Yeah. I think if we look at whether John Jones' ego is going to be at a point where he's like, no, I'm going to make my comeback. I'm going to stand and I'm going to kickbox him and I'm going to finish him. Then we've got an exciting fight. Then we've got a beatable John Jones, I think.
I think that's a terrible game plan, by the way.
It's a terrible game plan. But, does John Jones want to make his comeback a really dull, boring lay and pray? I don't know. Maybe he's going to think he's better at stand-up than Cyril Gane. Maybe he's going to, if his sparring's been going well and the yes men around him telling him what he can do, I mean, I'm sure he'll find out within a round just how good Cyril Gane's striking is. But it's if, when, why, what's, isn't it? We don't know. And that's what makes it exciting.
Yes, absolutely. Right. This is something we need to talk about. I take no pleasure in talking about it at all. Yeah. For those of you that don't know, I think it was New Year's Eve in Cabo, Dana White was filmed slapping his wife. And now there's been very little real fallout from it, really. Some media members asked a few questions. He did an interview on TMZ, who UFC clearly have a very good relationship with. But the actual situation is that he did it. He was videoed doing it. And there's not been any punishment for it. Just to talk through the video itself, and then I'll ask you, Stu, what you think about the whole thing. But so the way it to my eyes, having watched it a couple of times, it seems like Dana's wife is upset about something. Like she's kind of leaning over this railing. She looks upset. She's got her head in her hand. She looks like she's had some kind of news that is going to upset her. We can only guess what that news is. We have no idea. But she looks upset. Then it looks like she goes to walk away, and Dana grabs her wrist, preventing her from walking away. She then turns around and hits him. And then he retaliates with not one, but 2 slaps to her. And then it's difficult to really see what happens after that. And then the video cuts out. What were your kind of immediate thoughts when you saw the video?
Just absolute disappointment. Just, fucking hell. It's very, very unpleasant to watch. Obviously, it's no surprise that both of us don't agree with the thought that you can hit a woman. Also, I should add that nobody should hit anybody. We should throw that out there as well. I'm not suggesting that he had the right to hit her because she hit him, but she shouldn't be hitting people as much as he shouldn't be hitting people as well. It's certainly somebody whose job as well is to throw it. Is to constantly try and promote a sport that is so often said that it's just thugs and it's brutal and it's unpleasant and they're just and we've seen the president of the organization do that. We've seen people, other fighters and former fighters and commentators be sacked under allegations of arguing with women and you know, and now we've seen this happen. There's no denying what happened. It's there. Everybody saw it. And it feels that there's been, you know, what was we hoping? Was we hoping that the UFC was going to go, right, we cannot, as an organisation, you know, stand by this. It's disgraceful. You know, we're a mixed martial arts, you know, and there should be an honour amongst that. And what you've done goes against every single law of sport, of life, of everything. It's really hard to kind of just
think about how far the sport's come as well.
Completely,
sports come from being illegal. I had an interview for for a BBC Sounds podcast thing recently, off the back of doing a TV thing. They wanted to interview me on a BBC Sounds thing. And she mentioned MMA. And the first thing that she said, she clearly never watched an MMA fight in her life, but she mentioned, you love MMA. And it's so brutal, isn't it? And I was like, well, yeah, but there's also fights where there's not a strike thrown because it's all the grappling and, you know, the usual spiel that you go through when you're trying to say to someone, your opinion of it, having never watched a fight, is very different to what it actually is. But
you feel like you have to defend it.
Oh, 100%. And shit like this does not help. If the president of the organization, and look, some people will say, like, as we said, we don't think anyone should have hit anyone outside of sparring in the gym and fighting in the cage and all that stuff. You shouldn't be doing it. Yes, she did hit him first, but even Dana White, which is good of him, actually, even Dana White has come out and said, don't defend me. So if you're going around saying, oh, but she hit him first, that's not a defense. And even Dana White himself, which is good of him, as I said, has come out and said, don't defend me. But he's like 4 stone heavier than her, probably. He's trained as well. We all know he's boxed and done things. He's trained at hitting people. I don't know what his wife's history is. I don't know if she's had any kind of fight training or anything like that. But equally, she was responding to being restrained, it seemed. We also don't know what's gone on in a conversation. You can look at them. There's clearly something's gone on. Something's been said, some news has come out, something has happened where she, I think, it looks like, is very upset with him. He's restrained her, she's swung at him, he's then hit her not once as a reaction, but twice. And then who knows what happens after that.
What's disappointing as well, and as I said, like, disappointments that the thing that just strikes me about this whole thing and is the lack of profiled fighters, people in the MMA community that have profile, coming out and calling him on it and speaking out about it. And
well, they're scared, aren't they?
Yes,
because clearly from the situation he rules the roost, doesn't he? Like, and even us saying this now, like, I mean, we get to go to fights every now and again because of this podcast. We interview fighters every now and again. Is us talking about this going to be something that people don't like and we somehow now don't get accredited or something? I don't know. Are we taking a risk by saying this? But it felt like, given the fact that so much of, particularly, I would say, the people that I socialize with, my circle, are not MMA. And because the idea of MMA is it's this brutal sport where only thugs compete in it and only kind of these kind of thuggish people want to watch it. That's not my understanding of this sport. That's not who I am.
Absolutely.
And so I felt like we had a moral obligation to kind of discuss this. And the other factor about it that has disappointed me is I don't necessarily. If any other head of a big organization did this, there would be further repercussions. Like, Dana White has done press conferences and he's come out and he's spoken about it. That is a good step. But he's also kind of said, oh, me just living my life as someone that has hit a woman is punishment enough for me because I'll be tarred with that. That's my legacy now. I'll be tarred with that. I'm like, that's not punishment enough. Like, there were fighters that tweeted afterwards that was kind of funny, saying, oh, I much rather would have had to live with the fact that I was a weed smoker and not have a 2-year suspension but I still got a 2-year fucking suspension for smoking weed and lost out on all that income and all that stuff. We don't live in a society where someone does something wrong and we go, well, you got videoed and you're going to have to live with that for the rest of your life now. That is your punishment. No, there's consequences. And it doesn't have to be something drastic like he can never be involved with the UFC again or fired or anything like that. But should he be maybe suspended for a short period? Possibly. Should there be
anger management courses,
all that stuff? Yeah. I mean, I haven't even seen, maybe this has happened behind the scenes or maybe it's happened and I haven't seen it. So if you've seen this, please feel free to message me about it. I haven't seen anyone come out and say, oh, Dana has donated money to a charity that's like a woman's shelter or a domestic abuse charity. And I don't know if PR-wise, him donating to a domestic abuse charity, they'd make it feel like, oh, well, Dana's a domestic abuser, which is why he done it. So maybe there's a PR problem with doing that and he should donate somewhere else. But I've not seen anything about him donating to any organization that is either related to domestic violence or helping women or anything like that. I've not seen any of that. And I think that would be a step in the right direction as well. And what Dana came out and said in the press conference was things like, if I take a suspension, that just hurts the fighters. It doesn't hurt me. I just go and chill for 60 days. It doesn't hurt the fighters. It does hurt the fighters. It doesn't hurt me. It hurts the organization. And I'm like, but does it? Like, who listening to this show right now is going to go, Dana's suspended for 3 months. I'm not watching next week's UFC event. I don't think anyone would do that. I spoke to my brother about it briefly, and he went, oh, I only really watch the press conferences for Dana White. And I was like, okay, fair enough. But would you then not watch the fights because you're not watching the press conference? And he was like, well, no, I'd still watch the fight. So what you're missing out on is maybe a few YouTube hits because Dana's not doing the press conference. Someone else is doing the press conference. I can't imagine they get a huge chunk of money comparatively to the rest of their organization from just Dana White doing some YouTube hits. Yes, he promotes fights via his Instagram and all that stuff, but I don't know. I think the UFC machine is such a well-oiled machine that it will rumble on and roll on. And I feel like as well, there's a possibility that Endeavor are the company that own the UFC. Should someone have come out and said something and said, we're punishing Dana for this by just like a suspension? So I think there's things there that could have happened that would have made this a much better situation. And yes, Dana has spoken about, my personal life's the main thing and I've ironed it out with my wife and we were just taking care of our kids. And yeah, of course, your number one priority is going to be your own family and your kids. I get that. But that doesn't mean that there shouldn't be some kind of public penance paid, particularly when you're looking at this sport. Like if the head of the Lawn Tennis Association or English Cricket Board or the Premier League or any of these things was caught on video slapping their wife, would they still be in a job? Just think about that.
No.
I don't think they would be. And I think at the very least, they would have been suspended and there would have been a whole big public outcry about it.
Yeah. But
it's just...
we mentioned, he's the king of spin. And it's like, okay, right. This is what's happened. Like at the moment, the whole world, the whole mixed martial arts community is talking about this one thing. What could I do now that's bigger than any news in the UFC in the last 3 or 4 years? John Jones is back. With him, what, a week, 2 weeks? Ridiculous. Like it does feel that that come about. I mean, it couldn't have come at a better time to take the eyes off of Dana White and to get people potentially excited about another very questionable character coming back into the UFC.
Where do you stand then as a company? As a company, there is possibility of another fighter in the future, whether it be a year from now, 6 months from now, 10 years from now, whatever it is, there is a possibility of a fighter being accused of or found guilty of domestic abuse. And you as a company then have to discipline that person. So if they discipline them properly and appropriately, it's very easy for people to turn around and go, hang on a minute, but you didn't do that with Dana.
This is an organisation that, when the Dolly thing happened, that guy's going to jail. He's never going to be in this organisation ever again. Fast forward 8 months, they're using that footage of the Dolly as fight hype.
Yeah. It makes me sad because I love this sport. The people that we've spoken to in this sport seem like lovely people. They are martial artists. They sacrifice things for their family. They're trying to lead a better life than they could have possibly done. Yes, the sport is violent. Yes, it is. But there's honor behind that. You see it in fights all the time. Yeah. Jesus Christ. We just had a fight on Saturday where Umar Nurmagomedov, who looks unbelievable, by the way, knocked out Raoni Barcelos and hammer fisted him immediately, but then was about to throw the second hammer fist, but instead, because the ref hadn't got in there in time, cradled his head and then apologized in his post-fight interview for throwing that extra strikes. He said it just kind of happened naturally and I didn't mean to. And as soon as I realized he was out, I was trying to make sure he was okay. That is the fight. That's the true nature of this sport that I want to believe in. That someone they go in there, they compete against each other, and yes, the stakes are higher and health can be at risk, but it's the only way they can prove they are the best at this martial art. And as soon as he's realized he's knocked out, he's cradling his head and trying to make sure he's okay. It's beautiful in a way. I don't know, mate. A lot of people might think I'm mad. I see beauty in that, and I think that's a wonderful thing. And shit like this just pulls us back down into the dirt where people think this sport is. When I talk to other actors and talk to people that have no idea about this sport, that's what they think this is. They think it's this dirty, grotty little sport. And we need to ascend from that and be more. Be more Umar Nurmagomedov. Yeah, that's what we need to do. And but we are going to get really short on time, and we do want to talk about some other news that might distract you from what we've been talking about for the last however many minutes.
But do you know what? We needed to talk about that because I think by not talking about that, I don't want any of our listenership to think that we don't care about that. I think we've done the right. We said we felt we wanted to speak about it because what our opinion counts for is nothing, but we didn't want to not talk about it. And any of our listeners think that, I clearly don't give a shit. They're still talking about how excited they are about John Jones. And it's like, we need to just kind of give it a little bit of context. We don't agree with that. We think it's despicable behavior. But I suppose almost contradicting that and going, well, anyway, we have actually got some really exciting news to look at now. But we also want the listeners that are coming to this podcast to enjoy the content that we're talking about as well. And as two British lads and UFC London is just months away. We've seen some amazing fight announcements, and we're not going to go into all of them because there's a lot and they're all very good. But I think we wanted to sort of touch on, I guess, the main and the co-main that have been announced in the last sort of few days.
Yes. So my prediction...
Leon Masvidal, I can't believe it.
It's not happening, mate. my prediction of Leon Masvidal for UFC London is right out the window. And I don't think Francis is going to be the heavyweight champ by the end of the year for you, Stu, either. So we're not doing great on our prediction. If you listen please go and listen to our predictions episode that we did where we tried to predict who would be the champions in every weight division by the end of the year. Really fun episode. We talked about our predictions that we got mainly wrong last year. And
we spoke about the predictions that Blake got mainly wrong last year.
I think you got a fair few more wrong than right, but you just did better than me, which wasn't hard. But anyway, we are so excited. UFC 286, I believe, in London, a pay-per-view event in London. It is confirmed. Leon Edwards versus Kamaru Usman 3. Oh, it's a bigger fight with a bit. Well, I was about to say it's a bigger fight with a bigger name.
Always forget it's
And I don't know if it
is.
I know, but I don't know if it is a bigger name than Masvidal. I don't know. It's a tricky one because Masvidal's got that kind of cult status. Usman's just better and really good and a pound for pound great. And it's a fight that maybe means more in the history books. But Masvidal's such a cult figure. To get that fight in the O2 where the original assault, I guess, took place, the 3-piece and a soda, would have been poetic and I would have loved it. But we've got what is probably the right fight, the correct fight, the fight based on meritocracy. Usman deserves an immediate rematch.
The media furore and press leading up to that is not going to be as exciting as it would have been if it would have been Street Jesus. We would have had madness,
it would have been so much fun. It would have been so much fun. And also it's a fight that I would have been way more confident Leon would have won. And I want to see Leon win.
Yeah. We're seeing Leon in his back garden. We're seeing Leon in the UK defending his belt, which is so exciting.
So exciting. I mean, it's only happened once before. It was Bisping in Manchester against Dan Henderson. So to get this is massive. Oh, it's a tough old fight for Leon because we all know that Usman was winning that first fight until that glorious head kick. But the elevation was a big factor. Usman trains in Denver, in Colorado, I believe, where they have elevation. Leon was really, and not the only fighter on that card either, really suffered from the elevation. I think they'll be down at sea level or whatever.
They'll be in his country. The noise when Rocky walks out will be ridiculous.
I think it's going to be a way closer fight.
Yeah.
I think it could go to a decision. And I think I'm going to lean for Leon. I know that it's heart over head maybe in some point, but I want to go for Leon. I really want him to do it in his back, as you say, in his home country.
Yeah.
I want to see it happen. Have you got anything else you want to say about Usman, Edwards, or do you want to move on to the co-main?
No, I'm glad it's Usman because that fight had to happen.
Yeah,
it had to happen, and I'm glad it's happening in the UK. I think
Absolutely.
Masvidal would have been wonderful. There's lots of fights I'd like to see Leon Edwards involved in, but I'd much rather favour Leon in the UK against Kamaru Usman. It's an incredibly tough fight for both fighters, but we, as you said, we saw the dominance of Kamaru in the early rounds, but he didn't win the fight. He got knocked out in spectacular fashion.
Yes,
and that can only bolster the confidence of Leon Rocky Edwards. And
absolutely,
I can't wait for it. What else got announced, Harrison? What else?
Oh, the co-main event of the evening is Justin Gaethje on British soil. Justin Gaethje is coming to London. I cannot wait. And he's taking on Rafael Fiziev, which again, I'm very excited about because we spoke on our prediction show again, and I'm so frustrated with some of the divisions where it just stagnates because that top echelon of the division only really want to fight each other and they're jostling for a title fight. And then there's this crop of amazing fighters between, say, 5 and 10 or whatever that just aren't really getting anywhere because the people at the top don't want to fight them. And lightweight is a massive culprit of that. When you look at Chandler and Poirier and until now, Justin Gaethje, and then you've got this crop of Fiziev, the Gamrots, Arman Sarukians and Ismagulovs and all these people coming through, Jalen Turner stuff. You've got to give them a chance against these top guys. And it's happening. It's happening. Justin Gaethje, of course, it's Justin Gaethje because he's a madman, and he's taking on Fiziev. Oh, this fight's going to be fireworks. No one's going to take that. Fiziev is just an excellent kickboxer. Justin's got wrestling, but he never uses it. He's just a marauder. And
that geezer's literally just got. Well, they must wrap his hands in like pure chaos because whenever he throws down, it's absolute chaos, and I fucking love it.
It's great. I mean, you're dead inside if you're not excited for a Justin Gaethje fight.
Yeah,
everyone is excited for a Justin Gaethje fight. You're watching the wrong sport. Go and watch Tiddlywinks. Yeah, man, I cannot wait. And I'm so excited, and I'm so hoping we get our accreditation, and I'm so hoping we get to sit cage side. If I am cage side when Justin Gaethje is in the cage, I think I might have a heart attack or something. I'm just being so excited. I'll be so excited. I won't be able to sit down. So yeah, that's what we've got.
Yeah.
That is what we've got. And whether you're watching it in the arena or you're watching it at home, the fact that we're going to watch Justin Gaethje in London, oh man, I'm so excited.
Absolutely. Well, look, we're about to hit the hour mark. Did you want to touch on you know, the PFL news?
Oh, I mean, maybe we should incredibly briefly, but like, let's wrap this up. Jake Paul has signed with the PFL. Whatever you think of Jake Paul, this is great business for the PFL as far as I'm concerned. This guy brings eyeballs. Again, is he a genuine, proper fighter? It's debatable now. I've got more respect for him now than what I had, say, a year or two ago when he was fighting Ben Askren and all that kind of stuff. But I do think he's handpicking certain fights to make himself look good. What he said in his announcement when he signed for the PFL is that he's going to be part of their super fight series. The PFL are doing these super fights now, so not everyone is going to be part of their season. So Jake Paul would not be part of their season. And he wants to fight Nate Diaz in a boxing match in the PFL cage, I guess. And then 6 months later, rematch Nate Diaz in an MMA fight. That sounds fun. And that'd probably be MMA fight as well. And the fact that they're doing 1-on-1 makes it more interesting to me. Jake Paul versus Nate Diaz in a boxing match, I think there's only one way that goes because Jake is so much bigger than Nate. And that's not an accident. He's picking people smaller than him. But the fact that he says he'll do an MMA fight afterwards and it could be 1-on-1 and we could see Jake Paul in an MMA match against Nate Diaz, that excites me a little bit. And I think the fact that they'll do the boxing match and then that's what we should do. And then after that, I don't know, what do you make it after that? Just a kickboxing match in 4-ounce gloves. Like, I don't know, how do you, if it's 1-1 in Tiddlywinks, get the Tiddlywinks back. You know, so yeah, I actually think this is the first time I've ever gone, oh, I'd maybe be sort of interested in watching Jake Paul. Because I've never watched a single Jake Paul fight. But if they go, we're doing boxing then MMA, like if it was just boxing, I'd probably be again like, meh, not that bothered. Yeah. But the fact that they're doing both or saying they're going to do both, and that's if they can get Nate to agree, then yeah, I'm up for it.
Have Jake Paul, Nate Diaz, and Francis Ngannou, I ain't being funny. There's going to be a lot of fighters in that UFC thinking, I might have a little look over there because there's money there, and you know, and there's a lot of eyes on it. And
well, I mean, you only have to look at the fact that like Sadib Osai, Brendan Loughnane, Olivier Aubin-Mercier all just won $1 million.
Yeah.
And are they top 5 in any UFC weight division? I love Brendan, but I don't think so. I don't think Brendan necessarily beats Arnold Allen or Topuria or Volkanovski or Max Holloway. So, you know, I mean, you get $4 fights, $1 million. Sounds fantastic.
And also, as you know, fans of mixed martial arts and fans of boxing, like it's another organisation that's growing and putting on exciting fights. And as you know, it's only the fans that win there. You know,
100%.
So
100%. I mean, I don't like the idea of a company having a monopoly over fighters and being like, you can only fight here, which is how it feels with the UFC because they're so good, because their product's so good. They've done it on purpose, but you know, well, tough. Other people have to step their game up. And the PFL and Bellator and people like they have to step their game up. And hopefully that's what they're doing. So if you've got fighters in loads of different organizations, then you get to a point where you're like, oh, but I want to see him fight him. And that might never happen because they're not in the same organization. So there's problems with that from a fan's point of view. But equally, you want to see the fighters make as much money as possible, have as many opportunities as possible. And what I'd really love to see is a situation like what Bellator did with Ryzen recently. Bellator and Ryzen had a crossover fight.
Yeah.
Can you imagine Bellator versus the PFL? And it will never happen because the UFC is so far ahead of everyone. Why would they want to boost up their competition? But eventually, if the PFL got loads of amazing fighters,
Blake. You don't know. Francis Ngannou, if he's,
they wouldn't do it. The UFC are the number one organization, and everyone sees their champions as the best in the world. They're not going to put that at risk by saying, "Oh, after this fight, Jamal Hill, can you go and fight Vadim Nemkov?" And then Bellator look like the better organization.
I think Cyril Gane wins the strap. People are always going to go, yeah, but we never beat Francis Ngannou. And I don't know. I mean, we look at what we were saying about what's left for Amanda Nunes, and it's like,
yeah.
Well, we know
Chris
what we want to see.
would be great.
Kayla Harrison. We want to say Kayla Harrison.
Yeah.
And we're being denied fights, But I understand that business is business. But that's why I'm all for organisations like PFL getting some big names in there and building up their roster and getting more eyes on it. And by bringing Jake Paul across, it's going to bring a lot more eyes to it as well, and a lot of hype. We're going to see the words PFL in a lot more places. Them 3 letters are going to start creeping up on them other 3 letters. And I'm up for it.
All right. Well, we'll see what happens. That was the news. And please, we don't know when it'll be out. Hopefully it's out already or it's coming your way. Stick with us. UFC 283 preview show. Jamal Hill taking on Glover Teixeira for the the vacant light heavyweight title. And Brandon Moreno and Davison Figueiredo. What a fight that's going to be. I'm so excited about that fight.
There's way more on that card as well, mate. There's way more on that card.
I know.
Can I just say as well, for those of you that are watching this on YouTube, please subscribe and drop a little comment below, because we're seeing that so many of you are actually watching this as well as listening. So all of you on YouTube, we sort of don't really ever sort of shout you out, but thanks ever so much, because the numbers on YouTube are really growing. So if you can subscribe and start commenting, and we'll endeavour to have a natter back. And like you say, the messages on the socials are always there to be used. Drop us a message. Let us know you'd like to hear us chat to. If you've got any questions for MMA-based questions for Blake and I that you want us to talk about on an episode, then if we get enough questions, we do a sort of a listener questions episode and things like that. So just essentially what I'm doing here is saying thanks for supporting the podcast, and we're not ignoring you over on YouTube. We've seen that there's been a big uptake on it, so thank you ever so much. And if you're listening, wherever you're listening to this, on whatever podcast platform, please give us a little like, love, share, retweet, and subscribe, because it all helps. So that's it.
Thanks very much, guys. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.